So the idea is we're going to write a function that takes in a list of file names, any other list of file names, hyphenated or not, file extensions or no. I added that to make the function more flexible. It returns a list of headlines such that all words from the file name appear in the headline in the same order. Obviously, you don't scramble the order. I guess that's a given. All words except for those found in the junk word list are capitalized. All hyphens, if any, have been replaced by spaces. What if you don't have, right? You might not have hyphens, but if you do, they're replaced by spaces. The file extension, if it exists, has been eliminated, right? And what if you don't have a file extension? So it takes a little bit extra logic to look to see if you have a file extension or not. So we've got our expected output, little summary of what all went into the solution, and now for the actual solution. So I'm going to define a function, make headlines, I'm calling it. And it's going to take a files list as its argument. And we're going to also need another list to store the final product, which is a list of headlines, right? So we take in a list of files and return a list of headlines. So a new empty list to start, right? A new empty list to store the headlines result. Then we're going to loop the file list, and every item is going to be a file name, right? So for file name and files list, what are we going to do each time to each individual file name? So we want to replace hyphens with spaces and make file name lowercase, right? In case we have a mix of cases, we need to just flatten it all out as lowercase to start, and we'll capitalize as, each word as needed. So we're going to say file name, and we could do these two moves. We need the replace method and the lower method, but we can chain them into one move. File name. So file name is going to equal itself dot replace, replacing hyphens with spaces. And then that result is going to be put to lowercase. So we can do this in one line. This is known as chaining when you have more than one method in a row like that. Now we're going to make list from file name string, right? So we're going to say file, or actually these are words. When you make the list, you're getting words. Like each word of the file name is an item in the list. So words list equals file name dot split with no argument, no delimiter. That means it'll split on the spaces of the file name, right? Remember, there are no more hyphens, right? So it's going to go in to the file name. Every time it sees a space, split that as another list item. So you're going to wind up with a list of words, one per word of the file name. Before we iterate over the words, we know that we want the first word capitalized, even if it is a junk word, right? Let's just add that as a term. The first word of a headline should be capitalized, even if it is a junk word. If you didn't do it this way, that's fine, but that's just what I'm doing. So the initial the gets capitalized, even though it's a junk word, right? The best of the best, right? So I just added that. So to do that, now that we have a list of words, that's the first word, that's word list 0. So we're going to say words list 0, the very first word of the file name, which has now been broken up into an array, is going to equal itself capitalized, because Python has a capitalize method, which just uppercases the first letter of whatever string it's called on. And now we're going to capitalize first word of list, which the headline will be built off of that list. So now we're going to, speaking of headline, we're going to start the headline string. And now we're going to loop the words list. For word in words list, what do we want to do to each word? We're going to check if it's not in the junk words. If word not in junk words. I like this syntax because it's very much like you're just talking, right? It's kind of like written English. If word not in junk words, very easy to understand. If it's not in the junk words, that's a word that we need to capitalize. There's another syntax I was using for this, different logic, checking to see if junk words, word dot count. No, if junk words dot count word equals 0, it's not in the junk words, right? So if you go through the junk words and count instances of the word and you get a 0, it's not in the junk words. So that's another way to say it's not in the junk words. But I just like better to say if it's not in the junk words, right? So we can say or if junk words dot count word equals 0. Regardless of how you put it, if the current word is not one of the junk words, it gets capitalized. And remember, we've already capitalized the first word, right? Like if the junk word starts the phrase. And then once you're done with the if, when you're still in the loop, whether or not it was capitalized, it gets added to the headline, right? Which is a plus equal to build up the headline word by word. And you want each word to be followed by a space, so the next word isn't glued to it. So capitalized or not, add current word to headline and capitalize the non-junk word. That would be the previous step. And if the current word is not a junk word, right? So then we're going to have another piece of if logic to check if there's a dot, right? Because I added that feature, little flexibility. It's got to be able to handle even if there's no dot. If it's looking for a dot by index and there's no dot, it throws an error. So we're going to have to say if headline dot find, that's a method we haven't talked about, I don't think, but you're going to try to find a dot. And if it can't find it, it returns you a -1. If there is no dot in the headline, right? I might have made a mistake when I pasted that into, the solutions are all in the Slack, right? Yesterday I posted all the solutions. Let me see. If there is, I think I need to make that. If there is, no, if headline has no file extension, sure. Okay, that's correct. So if there is no dot in the headline, right? After you've made the headline, the last word would have a dot in it, right? That hasn't been removed. But if there is no dot in it, then you don't need to remove the dot because there is no dot. So what you would do is you would simply append the existing headline with no changes made to it. You just append the headline with no changes. Now, if there is no dot, the last word nevertheless has a space added. So we're going to strip. The strip method removes leading and ending spaces. So we're going to take off the ending space of the string into the headline. Otherwise, it'll be just an empty space to end the string. Else is the headline does have a dot. So there is a file extension, which we need to remove. So we're going to say headlines. We'll do this in one step. Headlines list dot append headlines dot append, not the whole headline, but just a sample of it from 0 to headline dot index of the dot, right? So we're appending a slice. We could save that slice as a variable and then append it, or just do it in the one move. So you're appending not the whole headline, but just from the beginning up to, but not including the dot, thereby getting rid of the file extension. Now you're all done, and we return the headlines list. And to see if it worked, we have to call it. So we're going to say print a call to the function, which is make headlines. And we're going to feed in our news picks, which is the name of our list of file names, and run. And what do we get? Mets win in extra innings. We only got the one. I mean, that worked, but we only got one. Why? Oh, because I'm returning in the for loop. So it's going to return after one iteration of the for loop. And then the return statement also exits the function. So you'll never get more than the first one. We need to return after the for loop is over. There you go. There it is. Junk words that start are capitalized. Other junk words are not. It handles non-file extension entries, right? These guys don't have file extensions. So it worked. That is the solution. Not saying it's the only solution, but this was my solution. Hope it helps. And again, there's a little summary of what all went into it at the end. We have a lot of methods. It's kind of cool. Little study tool, right? We've got a string method replace, a string method lower. We've got an array method split. We got a string method capitalize. We've got string method find, that's 4 string methods. String method strip, that's 5. String method index is 6. And we've got append, the second of the 2 list methods. That and what are the 2 list methods? Oh, split is not a list method. That's a string method. So we've got one list method, append, and we've got 7 string methods because split is called on a string and it returns you an array, right? Returns you a list. Okay, that was a good catch there. Clarify all that. So 7 different string methods, and they're all kind of needed, right? I played around with it a lot to try to get it as lean as possible. It's got 16 lines, but I had it down to 12 lines until I refactored it to make it more flexible where it handles no file extension. Anyway, that's my solution. Hope you like it. The next video, we'll be looking at HW assignment number 4. This was number 3. Okay, thanks for watching.